When Nintendo was designing the groundbreaking The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, I doubt they were thinking of how badly the game could potentially age in the future, only to have Gen Z complain about how dated and dogshit the game apparently is. The truth is, video games are incredibly difficult to make. Even the worst games take so much time and coordination to develop, meaning that it is a god-given miracle that we even get to play Hannah Montana the movie, the video game. Ocarina of Time set the groundwork for so many 3D games, with mechanics like Z-targeting carrying over into games of today, a technically open world, chickens. No matter how forward-thinking a game is for its time, standards change and games evolve, turning that new shit into old and outdated shit. Fuck you, Grandpa. New Super Mario Bros. More like not new at all. GoldenEye for the N64? More like I have 64 reasons not to play this garbage. Old school RuneScape? The Last of Us. Man, this game could really use a remake. Vocabulary lesson. Do not call Resident Evil 2 2019 a remaster. This is a remake, a game completely built from the ground up with new graphics, new gameplay, new everything except for story and setting. Don't call Tomb Raider Definitive Edition a remake. It is a remaster just like any other HD port, like the Nathan Drake collection for PS4 or the Ezio trilogy, etc. Crash Insane trilogy, Demon's Souls, Pro Skater 1+2, even though these have the exact same gameplay as the originals, the new engine and graphics constitute this a remake, not a remaster. It's a small thing, but I just about crash out every time someone calls Final Fantasy VII Remake a remaster. Like, it's in the fucking title! We've progressed so far in gaming to the point where games are better than they've ever been, more original than they've ever been, finished experiences worth pre-ordering? About one good game is released every year and gamers are frankly fed up. Fucking pronouns! It's not like games have always been perfect or finished. My favorite game of all time, Bloodborne, has this door that says that it's locked, but there's nothing in the game that lets you unlock it, meaning that at some point in development this was intended to lead to somewhere, but they forgot to patch out the message. Fucking awful video game! Along with video games never being perfect, even for their time, games age over the years, making them harder to come back to and appreciate. I wish I could experience waking up on my birthday in 2001 with my new copy of Sonic Adventure 2 and experience that game the way it was intended. Man, this game is pretty fun. Holy shit, they hit the second tower! Gamers have a terrible memory, because there's no other explanation for Ocarina of Time being the highest rated game on Metacritic. N64 games are pieces of shit, but they were probably once mind-blowing. That's what you get for entering the 3D space. You're bound to make systems that don't age well, as they'll be replaced or improved upon. Some games age better than others, while the latter is GoldenEye, a terrible video game. Regardless of how worth a game is to go back to, older titles should always be playable and accessible in the current day. You could put these older titles on a premium subscription service where the emulation is worse than fan-made alternatives, or remaster the game and chuck it on modern consoles, or remake the game entirely. Remasters are good for games that don't require full overhauls to meet current day standards, along with taking less time to develop than a full-on remake. Some games just need a 60 FPS patch and to be playable on something that isn't a PlayStation 4. On the other side of the spectrum, you have remakes that are actually really good for making money. Some games have narratives worth telling, but they can't be fully appreciated and experienced by the general population because they don't like turn-based combat. So, you turn the 30-hour JRPG into a modern action game with a big, fun, open world that is stretched out into 3 50-hour games. Or you want to simply overhaul the game's visuals to sell a console. Besides taking up dev time that can be used on potentially new games and IPs, remakes are worth having, and for the right games, could bring out the potential of older titles that either got diminished with time or were never fully realized. I doubt that while Capcom was designing Resident Evil 4, they were thinking, this game is pretty fun, and we put so much effort into designing this virtually flawless video game. Let's fuck it up! In the pursuit of creating something new and reaching a new technical achievement, Resident Evil 4 laid the groundwork for many third-person shooter action games to come by controlling like a game that was released in 2005. This action survival horror masterpiece is a game that should be recommended to everyone, with the big old asterisk that you just may not click with the tank controls. Wow, this serial is good, but there's too many thumbtacks. Resident Evil 4's movement and camera controls are not the traditional dual analog control scheme that we modern gamers are accustomed to. Moving Leon around and aiming has a bit of getting used to, and while it is completely possible to get used to this control scheme, it's also completely possible to get used to wiping your ass with sandpaper. The game was designed around this slower control scheme as the enemies walk at you at the pace of your paraplegic grandmother. Swapping weapons is not as quick as modern games, you have to open your inventory to swap to another gun manually. These things keep the game from being truly timeless in my opinion, and act as sort of hurdles for players like me to overcome. But thankfully, Capcom answered my prayers of wanting to enjoy Resident Evil 4 like everybody else without facing the adversity or even slight friction of learning a foreign control scheme. I can now enjoy a cynical rehashed Resident Evil 4 conjured up by the soulless video game industry that milks me dry again and again. Resident Evil 4 Remake is a wonderfully crafted take on the original game. The game controls how you expect it to, used WASD and a mouse, or you fondle a controller properly now. While the remake doesn't preserve everything, it recreates most of the original game's content, and at the end of the day, you're still playing Resident Evil 4, just a modern version of it. It is nothing short of an incredible game, yet why? Why spend resources retreading old shit when you can just make new shit? Better yet, why RE4? Before this, Resident Evil 2 and 3 both got the remake treatment, and it made much more sense. Fixed camera angles, hard as nails item management, and the PlayStation 1 controller make for a game that would destroy the brain of any Fortnite child. I know that fixed camera angles add to the horror, and I will play Resident Evil 1 one day, I swear, but the style, even though it was revolutionary for its time, proves to be a hurdle for me and other players. Hi, I'm here to sell my dignity. Resident Evil 2 Remake is the best Resident Evil 2 remake there is. Steep competition. Now this is what remakes are all about. Turning these once JPEG environments and backdrops into fully modeled 3D spaces is so cool to see, not to mention that yes, it now controls like Fortnite. While the original fixed camera angle has an unmistakable horror and puzzle-like quality, the over-the-shoulder perspective offers a much more straightforward approach to horror, instead of not being able to see a clicker because the camera angle obscures it from you, and then probably shitting your pants when the game eventually reveals it to you. Now, you just see it in the distance, being forced to face your fears and tread on forward. You still feel cramped in the police station, you're still running around enemies to conserve ammo. Gameplay loop-wise, it's as one-to-one to the original as you can get when you're changing how the game is fundamentally designed. Sure, the tank controls of the originals add to the horror and intensity, but it's not like you can't achieve those feelings in a modern context too. I prefer the Resident Evil 4 remake as a game, but RE2 Remake is probably more justified as a remake. Resident Evil 3 is fucking weird. It's like a 3-hour game, it's still pretty fun and has like barely any filler, but they fuck up the "you want stars, I'll give you stars" line.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Come on, you creepy ass stalker. You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Brother,
Video games imitate real life. Some people are born into environments where they can thrive, find opportunity. Life becomes easier for them because of their circumstances. Sonic needs affirmative action. Sonic Unleashed, a game so ambitious for its time, elicited reactions like,
"There's one thing you should know about Sonic Unleashed before spending your hard-earned money on it. It's a big piece of garbage."
This game was released in 2008, and the Hedgehog engine made this one of the most visually stunning games of its time. The lighting, the post-processing effects, the swooping camera angles, this is one of the most stunning games of the 7th console generation. So stunning, in fact, that the hardware of the time could not run this game for shit. This isn't even a case of more dev time potentially making this game more optimized for the consoles on which it was released. This game was just that intensive. It's not that Sonic Unleashed didn't need more polish, it definitely could have had its pacing issues ironed out, and the Werehog levels could have been a bit more, I don't know, fun. But when the consoles are struggling to run their Werehog stages at anything above 10 FPS, it makes playing these levels pretty unbearable. However, these days, running the game on any modern Xbox console, you can slide the frame rate up to 60 FPS, making this game instantly more enjoyable. The daytime stages play so much more smoothly, besides some glitches brought about by the increase in frame rate, and the nighttime stages are actually tolerable. There are still core issues to be solved in the game, and a full-on remaster by Sega would be amazing to address these issues and finally bring it to PC. I know this would result in a good game because fans have already made mods tweaking the game a bit to make it a much better experience. Emulation is amazing. Sonic Colors Ultimate is one of the worst remasters out there. It was a Wii game that got upscaled to HD with the bloom set so high Sonic is practically glowing, and the Switch version has a body count due to its seizure-inducing glitches. Remasters and remakes can definitely mess some things up, or just be a downgrade in general. But I doubt studios try to fuck up their remakes and remasters. Rather, bad releases are a result of poor executive decisions, crunch culture, and releases just being rushed. Remasters and HD ports may be easy cash grabs, but they're also so necessary to preserve games, especially when simple emulation jobs won't do. Kid Icarus Uprising is the creative Smash Bros. Masahiro Sakurai's magnum opus. One of Nintendo's most creative and unique projects is stuck on this system, and the game's biggest flaws are because of the system on which it was released, not too dissimilar to Sonic Unleashed. Playing this game is an arthritic nightmare on the 3DS. Moving Pit around with the circle pad and aiming with the stylus is, while intuitive, fucking uncomfortable. I can only play a stage at a time until I have to put it down, which is a massive shame because this game is so much fun. The mix of melee combat but primarily ranged combat is realized extremely well, and the plethora of cool weapons you can experiment with, and the menus, oh my god, the menus are adorable. It is straight up a criminally overlooked game, and it has everything to do with it being released on the 3DS. The Wii U was a console that only idiots bought. It was a complete and utter commercial failure, but it had bangers like Splatoon, Mario Maker, Mario Kart 8, DK, Tropical Freeze. All these games would go on to find their proper audiences on Nintendo's next console. The Switch became home to games that never got the love and attention that they deserved, be it through sequels that were pretty close to the Wii U versions or re-releases. Kid Icarus Uprising deserves this treatment too. But the issue is, it's kind of annoying to make a 3DS game that had stylus functionality and dual screens into a traditional game, not to mention a potential lack of financial incentive for Nintendo to resurrect this hidden gem. I can think of ways this can work on the Switch, such as motion controls acting as like a Wiimote pointer for aiming, just like in Mario Galaxy on the embarrassing 3D All-Stars collection for the Switch. But this is only one of many games in the history of gaming that got completely cucked when it came to being enjoyed or being played at all. But thank God Sony remade The Last of Us, because how else are we gonna play this game? It's just too green. Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered. Fucking shoot me in the head. Yes, instead of remastering Bloodborne, a game that runs at sub 30 FPS, looks kind of ugly due to the anti-aliasing solution, if you could even call it a solution, they remaster Horizon Zero Dawn, a game that already looked good and was available on PC and PS5 at high frame rates. Bloodborne doesn't even have an official 60F patch. You have to jailbreak your console just to do that. Not to mention the wizardry going on over on the fan emulation side of things. Not having Bloodborne on PC is one thing, but it's an entirely new low to completely ignore the game and not even update it for your shiny new console. Fucking shameful, Sony. I've talked an awfully lot about remasters and not as much remakes, but that's because for the most part, remasters / ports are what is probably more necessary for us gamers. Remasters instead of remakes would mean less dev time that could be spent on new IPs, and generally a more faithful realization of the original game's intent. But remakes are still amazing to have, even if they can be seen in an extremely cynical light. Remakes that are purely visual, like Demon's Souls and Crash Insane Trilogy, is in my opinion, the way to go. In the case of Crash, remastering the original PS1 game would look fuck ugly, but this bouncy Pixar-like quality in the remake, holy shit. It just goes to show how far technology has come, especially in the medium that is video games. As much as I think Ocarina of Time is maybe a little bit overrated and has aged quite a bit, the 3DS remake almost convinced me that Ocarina of Time is a good game. The remake is very faithful to the original, with an art style reminiscent of the artwork for the original game. Not to mention of the improvements made in the remake that Ocarina of Time was in dire need of. The water temple being not as annoying to go through now is worth celebrating alone. The more radical attempts at remakes like the Silent Hill 2, Final Fantasy VII, and Resident Evil remakes try their best to keep the spirit of the originals while adopting fundamentally different and modern game designs. As long as these releases don't stop Capcom from making Resident Evil 9 and 10, I don't have much issue with it, as long as these remakes don't completely lose the original identity of the game. Video games are an incredibly volatile medium of art, and it is so hard to make a timeless game, because in the pursuit of creating something special, not every idea will stick or age well. But it's those games that are the most forward-thinking, the most potentially rough around the edges, that deserve to be appreciated for what they got right. Ocarina of Time, Dark Souls, Resident Evil 4, these are all flawed games, but these are some of the most important games ever made, and I want people to appreciate them one way or another.